The next slide gives you the overall view of the funding schedule here through FY23. You can see that the big years will be FY 2020, FY 2021, and FY 2022. The state amount, I think you can be optimistic that if state funding remains at the level that it's been at for recent years, that Kent County would be in a very, very favorable position to request funds. And that's based on the age of the facilities that you have, the condition of the facilities, and the fact that you really have not asked for very much in about a decade with small projects. And so there's a clear recognition of need, and I think that you would find a good response from the state. Obviously, the schedule that I'm showing here depends on the availability of funds, state funds and county funding, and the actual funding amounts, as I said before, could vary. The next slide does show the more specific detail for the 5 projects that we're recommending. And you can see that the FY 2020 submissions for the state CIP have to go in by October 1st this year for FY 2020. And they would be for the Rock Hall Elementary School roof, for the small renovations at Rock Hall Elementary School, planning approval for Galena Elementary School, and the security vestibules. Now, we don't know if it's going to be a new initiative. I heard on the radio driving up here that the General Assembly is considering legislation for a safe schools program. I know that there's something in the governor's budget, and we don't know what form that's going to take. But there is always the capital improvement program. It's a relatively small set of projects. Capital improvement program tends to be for larger projects, but given the urgency of the issue, they may be interested in funding security vestibules and so forth.
Well, yeah, there has been a supplemental budget submitted by the governor to the General Assembly, and they have 3 weeks to work on it.
Yeah, $125 million for school safety and $50 million for mental health counselors and possible
it's just
SRO.
A small drop in the bucket.
I know.
Considering the issues. However, that said, I don't know where we are on our requests for being part of the distribution of whatever funds come out of the General Assembly.
Well, what typically happens is it'll pass, the amount will be identified, and then Public School Construction Program will define the application process. They'll notify all the jurisdictions, typically have a get-together where they go through, walk through the application process. This would be on the fast track. Something like this happened with the Energy Initiative in 2013 session, I think it was, 2012 session. And we put together the application procedures very, very quickly so that applications could come in that fall.
Right. Well,
like that would
I would state that couple of the officers for PASAM, which is the Superintendent's Association, met in the governor's office with Ed Clark, who is executive director for the Maryland School Safety Center. And what he was stating is if the budget does pass for the governor's request of dollars, what they're doing right now is they had, and we did just complete that, we're completing a survey in terms of asking some questions about, do you have a security vestibule? Do you have this? Do you have that? And my understanding from what he said at the meeting was that they would identify the school systems that needed the most help, if you will, with regard to some areas that were noted as deficiencies. One of the questions was asked, well, are you going to tell us exactly what has to happen? And he said, no, they're not going to say exactly what needs to happen, but there were some elements that they felt were important that should be in each school system. We weren't told what those were, but, you know, we did submit the survey, and every school, not just the school system, but every school had to complete that, and it was due last Friday.
My concern, and my concern with the state government all the time is very frequently Kent County is, as we would say on the street, treated like stepchildren. So I'm very concerned that you will not get, may not get a fair bite at the apple.
Right, and I, having been in that meeting, I asked that question because I was very concerned about us being a small school system, and I was told that every school system would receive dollars. That's what the governor's office said. Now, what that actually comes out to be, I don't know until it happens, but that's what I was told in the meeting.
Enough money to change the light bulbs.
FY 2021, the request would be funding for the Galena Elementary School. Typically, for projects like that, you have a request for planning approval in the first year, and then the second year, you have the request for the funding. And there would also be the request for the Kent County High School in that year, at least as we're outlining it at this point. And then the small projects at the high school, this was premised on the Qualified Zone Academy Bond Program being in existence. That program isn't being put forward this year because of the changes in the federal tax law that were approved in December. That traveled through, and so the state can't issue that type of bond now. We don't know if there's going to be an alternate program that will be proposed. These were the costs that we came up with the state share. In fact, we've just received the estimate for the concession stand stadium restroom, and it's considerably less than the figure that's shown here. But of course, now it doesn't have state participation.
Yeah.
It's a CUSAC program.
The cost,
I think it's about $485.
something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And the architect and the engineer are arguing the estimate as we speak.
Yeah, it was, we had
Back and
Guy
forth.
and Tom King and his group were the ones that were working on that for us. So that's, you know, we think it's a bit high. They're probably, again, there's things that we don't know, but it had, it was a restroom facility and concession stand in an area where people who were attending the game could eat, and, you know, some areas for them to be seated. There was a location and discussion about where could it be constructed so that we could maximize the use of the sewer and the water. And so there are two identified areas that we could place the concession stand, which is directly as you come into the stadium, or they're close to the tennis courts, where there's also parking as well. The boosters had identified another area which was closer to the field hockey, and that really is not a good position to place it due to the ability to access sewer and water. So it's kind of those. And there'll be some unknowns, obviously, but we'll see. But that was just an estimate, and so we have an initial schematic design for that. The boosters requested that because they still want to continue fundraising. They've been fundraising for this project. You know, there's a number of ideas in terms of, could you name it after someone and they'd magically come up with some money? You know, that's also a possibility too. But that is an important project for us to keep on the books and to consider.
People's Bank Stadium for $10 million.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Sold. Works.
The North Hagerstown High School stadium was actually a contribution from a construction company, and all they asked was that their name be on it. So they have that, and that's considerably more expensive than what we're talking about here. So.
Right. You never know. So.
Right. And so just to wrap up, at the end of this program, all of the roofs would have been replaced except for the middle school. Galena Elementary School will have been improved, not only in terms of building systems, but also in terms of the educational program. It really would not have to be looked at again for a number of decades. The board and central office functions would be in a better location, and there would be operational efficiencies that would be associated with that. And then every school would have a security vestibule. Once the long-term planning projects are completed, the middle school, a plan would be developed for the middle school to address this issue. All the issues that I've mentioned having to do with the educational program and the building performance. High school would show substantial improvements, and then ADA accessibility would have been addressed. And I do want to mention about that is that school systems that have undertaken to do a few projects a year in ADA, part of the argument for that is that if there were, let's say, a lawsuit brought, it's very important evidence, I think, to a court to say, we're trying, we're making the effort. We know we can't do it all overnight, but we're making the effort. And then what can we do in this particular case? And then the two schools, or the two facilities that would have been surplus would be a substantial reduction of square footage and operating costs. And then, depending on what comes out of the middle school study, there could possibly be additional reduction there, but that remains to be seen. The options that we looked at were fairly complex, and it's not an automatic thing that you can simply eliminate the middle school and consolidate the middle school and the high school. It's actually an extremely complex set of questions there. So I think that completes everything. I'd be happy to take questions, or Dr. Couch.
A few years ago, install a elevator. You didn't?
No, it was on the list, and it was before I came, but I guess it was taken off the list. So it just keeps getting moved further and further. It's a pretty expensive thing to put in, but, you know, and I certainly can attest that at times when you have students that need to have accessibility to the upper floor or the second floor, it's difficult.
And was the elevator at Garnet?
Garnet doesn't have an elevator either. Yeah.
They used to request one a lot years ago.
Yeah.
It was really to be used for food service, if I'm not mistaken.
No, that was the middle school. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because of the free lunch. I mean, excuse me, not free lunch. The breakfast program.
Was it 19,000 back then?
Yeah, it's probably. I don't know what the cost is now.
Any questions?
Brought a lot on the plate there.
It was a good committee.
Is this just the opportunity for you to go over this plan with us, or are we being asked to? I mean, is this where we should
I think the critical decision it has to do, it goes step by step, clearly. You know, this is a long-term plan, and every step of the way requires its own decision-making. The board has to make its decision. It has to approve an educational facility master plan, and it has to approve the FY 2020 capital improvement program. There'll be a request to the state, there'll be a request to the county government. One of the components of the request to the state is an affirmation by the fiscal authority, the county government. They support the projects that are being requested. If the project is requested by the Board of Education and is not supported by the local government, that project doesn't enter into the CIP, the state CIP.
Or it doesn't move forward.
It doesn't move forward at all.
Right.
I mean, it can be funded through other means if those means can be found. And so the critical projects here are the Rockwall Elementary School roof. The educational improvements at Rockwall don't have that same level of urgency, but they are important, I think. And then the planning approval for the Galena Elementary School. That school, the roof and the mechanical system are in such terrible condition that they really do have a very high level of urgency. They should have been replaced actually some time ago. Galena.
Yeah, well, we actually approved that 2 years ago, and it was taken off because the state wouldn't approve the HVAC system.
Right, because it hadn't, yes.
So,
Right.
you know, that was scheduled by us, by the board to fully pay for that and be done with it. We were doing Barnett at the same time, and we had a joint contractor that was going to do both. So,
It was Skype.
So, you know, again, this board's never not done what's needed for the safety of the kids in the buildings, or you know, keep them cool.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would note that there was some questions brought forward when we were discussing this at one of our board meetings, that the Galena roof is still leaking to some degree, and I do want to acknowledge the county, because you all did step up and do some work. Unfortunately, we're still, you know, experiencing some problems with the roof, and Jane was able to access some. Ms. Towers was out. Able to access aging schools funding. So we are going to receive and utilize $18,000 worth of funding to, yeah, it is patching, but I mean, at least, yeah, until we get to 2020.
But again, for clarity reasons, you know, even that, like you just said, we as a board, we gave exactly what was needed, the patchwork that was requested.
Right.
Which was,
I'm acknowledging that.
Right.
It was approximately, I think the county put in almost, it was about 50,000, I thought, in terms of, and it was just one area. But, you know, it's just,
So until we have those numbers,
yeah,
we've always said move forward, get your numbers, and then
right.
do what we have to do there.
And if I could add, I mean, Dr. Lieber, I've been here over about 20 years, and, you know, early on, we did a project every single year, and as a capital project, putting a roof on, it was nothing. We done it year after year after year. And I think we kind of got away from it a little bit when we weren't sure about the consolidation, which schools we were keeping, which ones we were giving. So I think that set us back a little bit. While we didn't want to do improvements to a school, only to turn around next year and do away with it.
Right.
So, you know, we've been very successful, this board has, in paying down debt year after year in the past, and we could absorb some of this debt. So I think obviously there's some need to do some projects in the school, in the capital improvement project. We've also got, I think, some needs in classrooms that we have to address in the coming years. My one question is, with those kind of needs looming out there, why is the Board of Education move one of the first things we want to get into? Because we moved the Board of Education. Well, the whole idea that was explained to me with the consolidation was to quit putting money into bricks and mortar and maintaining more schools than we needed and start putting it into the classroom. Take that, be able to put more into the classroom and do more for the education of the kids. I'm not sure that I see any advantage to educating the kids by moving out of what is really one of our better buildings into one of our worst buildings, which brings along a lot of additional costs, and I really don't see the advantage to the students, and that's what we're supposed to be here talking about. So that's one piece of the puzzle that I have a problem with.
You want us to talk about that before you move on to the next, or do you want to just share? Okay. Okay.
Dr. Couch and I have talked about this a good deal. Part of it is the locational issue. Rock Hall is somewhat remote, and the location at Wharton would be central county, accessible to people from all around the county. But there are also some educational and operational efficiencies, and perhaps you should speak about them. The transportation issue, professional development, these are things we've talked about. Also the 3-year-old program.
Yeah.
Well, if I could,
Okay.
in a perfect world, and when we had none of these other expenses looming out there, I would totally agree with you. It'd be much centrally located to put it into Wharton. Put it out to Wharton where it's easier for everybody to get around. With these kind of issues looming out there, I think they overshadow the idea of a little inconvenience to travel an additional 12 mile for however many employees is out there. So good. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Well, and then one of the other things that we have talked about, and it's in the budget that I presented, the preliminary budget that I presented to the Board of Ed, is we would like to also start a 3-year-old program utilizing the Judy grant. We don't have the capacity to put the 3-year-old program in any of our elementary schools because they're already full to capacity. So that was another thought, that we could utilize Wharton as our 3-year-old program. If you look at the Kerwin Commission's recommendation with regard to where they're going to go with the future, they're looking at 3- and 4-year-old universal pre-K, and then they're looking at 3-year-old programs and younger. So we would be one step ahead, if you will, in terms of identifying a location for the 3-year-old program, which would be funded through the Judy grant, which would then in turn make that an educational facility and be eligible for state funding should the need ever arise.
That's an issue, and it's a good view for the future. However, it's not immediate.
The 3-year-old program, it would be immediate.
Only by the board's decision to do that.
Yeah, we feel like it would be a benefit to our families and our students.
There's no doubt about that. Okay. However, there's not any requirement from the state to do that. yet. Whereas moving the board office is presented as a more of immediate.
Does just so we don't have duplication of services, do the Judy Center, it's at several facilities, do they cover 3-year-olds?
No. The Judy, well, and that's interesting because when the Judy Center grant was initially put into place, it was to provide additional services to service pre-K students. And so it initially started at Garnett, and there was only one 4-year-old program, and then we expanded it to other locations. So the Judy grant does provide some additional and requirements that you do some outreach and you do some work with daycares and those kinds of things. There are some specific grant requirements that we have to do, but it kind of has worked its way into it's no longer applicable for what we're doing in Kent County because we're already we've already put in place a full-day universal pre-K. So it doesn't really make sense, and we were told that since we have universal pre-Ks at all of the other buildings, we could not pay for any of our teachers or our staff using the Judy grant. So in essence, we had to find ways to spend that money that may not have always had its return to our families and our students. So if we expand it now to a 3-year-old program, we can pay for the teachers and the IAs out of the grant because we wouldn't have any other 3-year-old program. And then we could identify our students that really needed the additional resources and social, emotional, or academic supports. We could bring them into our program and provide those supports through the Judy grant.
You would bus those 3-year-olds?
We're talking with other, yes, we're talking with other, either bus them or parents would drop them off. We've talked to other, we're in the process of putting the grant together. There are other school systems that are doing 3-year-old programs, and some of them are doing only 2 days a week for session one, and like it might be Monday and Wednesday for one session, Tuesday and Thursday for another, and then Fridays would be for home visits. So I mean, we're
location for the entire county. So Rock Hall parents would have to bring their kids,
or we would bus them. Yes. Yes. Yes.
I will say that during the consolidation, when the people started hearing about consolidation, especially the elementary school kids, one of the things that they were the most upset about was the idea of busing elementary school kids all over,
right.
Well, across the county. I can't imagine what they would think busing a 3-year-old.
Well, I mean, during one of our public meetings and getting input from the community on our strategic plan throughout the process, there is a Montessori school that's located in Morton, and one of the things that she spoke and said, she's got kids from all over the county coming to her Montessori school at a very young age. So she felt like a centrally located, if we ever came to that, is really not as, as unacceptable, if you will, overall.
She's also dealing with a population of where parents are actually paying for their kids to go to Montauk.
I understand. But these would be students that we would identify that needed, I mean, obviously a parent doesn't have to access the program. It's an opportunity, it's a way in order to provide services. Many of the students that are identified through Child Find are students that really need to get into a structured program. They might be identified students with disabilities, they may have other social emotional needs, and it's an opportunity to get them in, provide those wraparound services so that we can provide some early intervention and early childhood supports so that by the time they get into kindergarten, often you can counteract their need to go into special education.
Let me understand this. The intent is to establish this particular type of program without any required mandate from the state.
Correct.
Because it's best for our students.
Right. It's based on the needs of our yeah, right.
So I'll make sure that
So this is premise that if the board moved to the former Wharton School, it would not need the entire building. So there's portions of the building that would be available
Right,
for
pre-K.
programs like Dr. Kelk is talking about, as well as professional development is another
Right.
thing. that should be
Well,
thought
and one of the things that when we initially started the Judy Grant, there's also a requirement that you partner and you work together with daycare, and you provide that level of support. One of the things that we're exploring and a possibility would be could there be potential of providing additional daycare and providing that coordination. I don't know. We did have a daycare at Garnett, but when we knew we were going to move into consolidation, we knew that we were not going to have the space. So we had to notify the daycare that we could no longer house them at Garnett. So, I mean, it does have some other opportunities and possibilities.
How old are children when they go to the Head Start programs we have around the county?
That I don't know, but I do know they have 3- and 4-year-old programs, and in other school systems they partnered. Again, we had Head Start at Garnett. We had to notify them as well.
Where
Right.
I worked, there's a Head
Right.
Start down there.
Right. And we had to notify them as well because we no longer had space. Other school systems have partnered with Head Start, had them located in the same building, and they trade their students. So half the day they're in Head Start, half the day they're in the school system's 3-year-old program. So it works really well. So there can be a lot of coordination in that way.
Well, getting back to the central office, I guess the reason I struggle with it a lot is because when we moved it off of Washington Avenue and that place was a wreck, we took that and sold that to the college, traded it to the college for some scholarships and things. But then when we went to relocate it, we looked at. It was recommended that maybe we buy an old drugstore out here and convert it into a building like that. And we said, and the board I was sitting on at the time said, well, why don't we put it out to the high school? At that point in time, we had gone through about 5 principals in about 6 years, and there was a big discipline issue out there. So we said, put the Board of Ed out there and see firsthand what the problem is and work to try to solve it and help us. They said, no, we have to be separated. We want to be separated. So they moved down. That's how they ended up down at Rock Hall. In order to turn that school into office space, it cost $400,000 and some. Now we're getting ready to move it out of what used to be a school into another what used to be a school. I can only assume that there's going to be additional costs to turn that into office space, just like we did in Rock Hall. And somewhere along the line, we got to make up our mind where our central office is going to be.
Right.
And money is at a premium, and when our whole emphasis is to stop putting it in bricks and mortar and start putting it directly into the classroom, I just struggle with moving the board office around. And I don't mean this directed at you, but us as a group not knowing where the devil we wanted to end up
Right.
for long term.
And I think that's what we tried to do with the facility strategic plan, is think about what made the most sense in terms of thinking if we continue to lose students, if we potentially might grow. And the fact of the matter is, we felt like at some point in time, if we continue to lose students, we may end up being a single campus school system. I mean, it's not my first choice.
I can only
Oh.
speak for myself. I think there's 2 things that we're trying to look at as well. And one of which is trying to identify how we can better serve our families and the students of Kent County. And if we have the ability to do this with the 3-year-old program, that's great. The other piece to this is looking at a strategic plan, with being kind of the newbie on the board, looking at it long term as to where we need to go and drive efficiencies into the system. Because I can promise you that the administrators and folks that are on the road, driving from Rock Hall to Galena, it doesn't seem like a lot, but that 25-minute, half hour, twice a day, takes them out of the schools and out of the classrooms. So the thought process is trying to get them situated, centrally located, the bus yard, bus transportation, food service, everything, and it's there. And I agree, the flip-flopping has to stop. But I think if we're looking long-term, it has, you know, and I know I personally don't look at a move of central office as being a short-term fix. You know, I think this is a result, this is a reaction to what we've experienced. And I think looking forward now, trying to identify the future, not that it's 100% correct, but I think this is, in my opinion, one of the best ways to look at it.
You know, the issue behind some of that is that building in Rock Hall still carries a $500,000 debt on it. That has to be paid back, and whether that, you know, and by avoiding that and keeping the board there year, 2 years, 3 years, until more thought process can go into this, and that $500,000 gets paid down and being utilized. And there's been other suggestions out there because our county government has needs for things as well. And structurally, the cost of doing, repurposing buildings versus building brand new for some of those services, I think there needs to be compromise. There needs to be at least conversation. I mean, there really hadn't been any conversation between us as a board and you as a board because of the study that's been going on to try and figure that process out. So, I mean, I don't think we can, personally, I don't think we can make those decisions to make that happen at this current time, because I think we need to have, as a body, two bodies, actual one-on-one meetings about this, because your budget's coming up, you're expecting expectations and decisions to be made, but then all this has to happen in a month. Because I see here on these papers, you like to move the board in the fall. You know, but yet there hasn't been any direct conversations amongst us to make those decisions happen. So I have a problem with it just as well. Not that I don't think it's the right decision, again, but I think we have to look at the entire need of the county and the citizens and the way their money's going to be spent. Because if we spend $10 million in another facility, because it's a forced expenditure that we're going to be required to do, or spend a few $1 million to be a joint effort into a complex, then it's smart money with the taxpayers too.
So the purpose of this process for us
is to start that conversation.
Is getting us to this point. I mean, and I agree. The conversation. I mean, it does go both ways, and some folks think that doesn't happen, and that's what it has to happen. And that's what we're doing.
And Joe, what you said about your explanation about why you were addressing the central office, I agree with, and just like I told Dr. Lever earlier, I agree with everything you just said. But I think there's other needs up there that directly affect the kids, and not whether somebody has to leave 20 minutes earlier to go to work or not. But these other things directly affect the children, and that's what the whole program is supposed to be revolving around, and putting that money in the classrooms, like we're, for whatever, if we have discipline problems, that's the most important thing. We need to address those issues, and this might come, but I think it's down the line a ways. That's what I'm saying.
I had a question too, because I didn't see it nowhere in here.
And I'm not a bit afraid of the capital improvements. We can take that and get back on schedule and do some each year and take big bites out of it and make it happen. But get back to where we used to be. But I just think that there's higher priorities out there than the central office.
Yeah, I didn't see anything in here about the alternative schooling. The buildings that we have there, are they still utilized for those services, and we still have a company there doing that?
Yes.
So all that's still...
Yeah, all that's still being utilized, And that's actually, it's pretty much a requirement now that all school systems have that in place. So that, I guess, I would say we were forward thinking in terms of what we had at Kent County High School, because that, especially with the new discipline regs, you almost have to have, some place to provide alternative education.
I will say this much, as far as this, the years I've been a commissioner, speaking for my senior person here, but
Oh, God.
but the idea is that this is the first time the school system, as far as I know, has ever done this.
Yes.
So this is
Degree, yes.
very, very helpful, whether you want to consider it an exercise or not. I think it's very admirable that the board took it upon themselves to do this. I think it's really, but like Commissioner Short said, it's only a beginning. It doesn't take into account a portion of what's not within your purview anyway of the entire county needs. That's our job. In collaboration with you. So we can make this, hopefully make this a whole thing a win-win. Going to be expensive.
Right.
I'm confident that we will get it done.
And I would just note that, we did have some discussions about central office in the high school. However, it would require renovations and moving, programs into other locations. And the bigger, larger picture, and I think it's pretty relevant with regard to what you spoke to when you opened up your commissioners meeting, is the ability to secure the facility if you have a lot of adults coming into a school. You almost have to consider the fact that people coming to central office to fill out an application or that kind of thing, you've got to be able to secure. And the location that we looked at one point, and I'm certainly glad we didn't move forward with that, it would have meant community members walking directly through the high school, and coming into that wing in order to find the finance office or HR. And so that's not going to be, it's just not, I'm not saying it can't be done, but you have to have some capital improvement investment to do that. And then lastly, I would say that I think we discussed at great length at the committee and also at the Board of Education that we feel strongly that we needed to maintain ownership of Wharton, just simply because there are too many unknowns with regard to where we're going with future enrollments.
Always owned by the county. Yeah. The Board of Education or the county commission is still owned by the public.
Right,
It's not going anywhere.
right.
So I would ask, back to my point, and I would ask that we slow the process down on the move of the board, and let's have some really good collaborative group meetings in the 1, 2, 3 to see if we can do the best for the whole county as a whole, instead of just thinking that that's what we should do right now, because if we figure out as a group that we can still utilize everything together in a facility like that, and just to put it out there, I know it's posted somewhere, a detention center moved to Wharton Elementary. That is not happening.
Well, there's 35 different things that might occur.
That is not happening. But, so that's speculation, that word out there.
Thank you. I was wondering.
Yeah, that is nonsense. But the conversations before this move with the Board of Ed, I think that part does have to be.
Well, I would like to suggest that we have a joint meeting. I think that would be an awesome opportunity to do that.
Well, and what I would like to suggest is there's a lot, Dr. Lever, you did a great job of explaining this, but it's still a lot in here. We just got it tonight, and I appreciate your professionalism in trying to explain it, but it takes me a little longer than one explanation to go through it, and probably have some additional questions that I don't have right now, but another meeting suits me just fine.
So when did you say, as far as for the capital projects to move forward through the state, when do we have to have that in, the request?
The request goes to the state. I think it's October 1st this year.
Okay.
The board has to make its decisions in August or September. That's very typical for boards of education. They have to approve the capital request.
But we have to have a plan done first.
Well, you have to have the scopes defined. You have to know what projects are going to be requested. And there should be the assurance that the county government will support. It's not the
Have to have the projects that we want to move forward immediately on so that we can present them to the state.
Right.
That's correct.
Galena and Rock Hall.
That's
And
correct.
also part of our budgetary process, too, to include which.
And then the projects would actually come to market in 20.
Well, the Rock Hall roof and the renovations would. The Galena, the first year would be a design year. Once the approval of planning, you can start design before that, but many jurisdictions wait till they have approval by the Board of Public Works before they start the architects working on the project. A project of this size for Galena, I would say 9 months for design, possibly a year, depending on the complexity of the mechanical system, really, and the interactions. And so it could be ready for bid a year later.
You had that cost for Galena, like $8 million?
Was it 5 million?
I think it was 5.9.
5.9.
Yeah, no, that was all in with all the add alternates.
Okay.
That's projecting to midpoint of construction.
That's, that would be a joint effort between us, state,
Right.
Yeah,
one other organization that funding could come from?
not in the case of Galena.
In case
No, no, it would be a state and county, and Kent County, in the latest calculation, was 50% state participation and eligible costs.
Right.
So ineligible costs.
Architecture.
No, that's
Right.
right. That's right. Soft costs are not part of that. Any square footage that goes beyond the projected amount, but there are various ways to, different ways to shape the project to try to maximize state funding.
I don't think you've bothered us at all as far as pointing out the necessary repairs that need to be done to the schools that we're going to continue to save and use and put children in. We know that's coming, and we've done it in the past, and we're ready to get back to doing it on the schools now that we know which ones we're keeping and move forward with it. But there's some other questions we have. I mean, I bet you we could come to an agreement relatively quick as to what we want to move on immediately to get it in the pipeline. We have to do it. There's no other choice but to fix that.
I mean, because the facilities are
We
demanding
have
it.
done it all, it's really nothing new, except some of them are becoming a little more pricey. I remember putting a roof on a school year after year. It was $500,000, put a roof on a school every year. 20 years ago, I don't know what it is today. It's probably a lot more than that.
It's a lot more.
Yeah. But we did it then, and that it has to be done. So that's not a discussion. It's just.
And that's the whole issue with the state, is that they will not share costs until it's exceeded its useful life, which is 20 years. So we're at that magical point that's where we're at. So,
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
guess I'll stay here, because I got, thank you. Thank you, because I think.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments.
Oh, sorry, we're still staying. Still next.
Hey, you get a chance to talk.
Oh,
Yeah, she will.
good evening. After your review is restricted, there's been some changes since the budget adjustment number one, and they were from MSDE. We were awarded some of the grants. Ready to Code, the Python software, Health Department, Teachers Quality. So we bring that for your review tonight.
Yeah, anybody have any questions? No?
I have none.
None. Well, we'll just take them both the same.
Okay.
The next one is for the unrestricted, so excited about this. We were able to squeeze in one more QZAD project this year. It was at Galena. We were able to secure for another playground that they were looking for consolidation. They needed some more playground. So we were able to get that. So a total of 4 projects this year with QZAD. And those are the budget amendments. Do we want to vote on those and then the non-reoccurring? or-
Yeah, probably.
All right.
So moved on.
It's restricted number 2 and unrestricted number 3.
And I'll second them.
Okay. Prior to moving second to approve budget amendment for restricted number 2 for current FY fiscal year and unrestricted budget amendment number 3. Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion's carried unanimously.
The next one is a non-reoccurring cost. This is due to the state March 31st, and it is slated here. The draft is for $25,315 for fencing. We received a couple quotes. That was the lowest quote that came in. Then new technology for there, $93,000 for cameras, recording discs.
9,300.
Excuse me,
Yeah, 9,000. I was like, I didn't read it as 93,000.
93.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what's a decimal point
That was
or a
like-
comma here or there?
Just check. And then the last one is the carpet sections of the Wharton Elementary classroom to turn to office space.
Yeah, well, okay, so,
So I understand what we talked about. So just as a matter, this is due March the 31st. Just because it's on here doesn't mean you have to move forward with it. But if it's a possibility, you have to get it into MSDE for approval.
I'm good. Thank you.
It's
Second.
Probably moving second to, what is this? To approve the FY 2019 non-recurring cost request to MSDE. All those in favor say aye. Motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you.
You.
That's it. Okay. Sheriff Price, please. Why you come looking for
yeah, nothing.
A long time since you've been in here, Sheriff.
That's been a while.
You're asking for money.
I am.
Better wait. He did come all the way back.
He did.
Got 4 inches of snow out there already.
No, don't say that.
That's not funny.
It was when I came in an hour and a half ago.
I saw you sneak out, get some fresh air or something.
Sheriff? Okay. You had a request.
I did. I forwarded a memo to the Commissioner's office the last couple of days in light of the events that have what we thought were some security needs here in our school systems. As you know, we've had a school resource officer out at the camp, and over the last 3 years, we've had discussions about putting one at the middle school. Unfortunately, though, over the last 3 years, we had difficulty attracting a suitable applicant for that position. But recently, we haven't identified one, and I've submitted a proposal for your consideration to put a resource officer at the middle school. Your memo at the very end of it says that if you choose to approve the proposed position, that the start date would be April 16th. I've had to move the date up to March 30th because the applicant, when he worked at another police agency, they only had 90 days to come back into circulation again. If they come back in after the 90 days, they're required to do 240 hours of field training. If they come in under 90 days, they're only required to do 80 hours of field training. So we're trying to get him in if approved, get him hired by March 30th, which will also allow us to put him into the middle school by April 11th as a certified police officer. Attached with the memo is the projected cost. The finance office figured this on 8 weeks by bringing him in a little earlier than April 16th, bringing him in on April 11th, March 30th rather. The cost is going to be right around $10,854.80. And those are my numbers. You may want to ask maybe Pat to verify that, but I think it's pretty close.
I got 14,670. Is that right?
That's the 8-week cost?
Is that the 8-week cost? Is that what you're talking about?
Now, the 8-week cost according to the finance office, was $7,500.
I'm looking salary and bennies.
Benefits.
Yeah, I'm not including the benefits. I mean, the benefits are broken down below that.
Right.
But certainly there are a benefit cost with that.
Well, I don't know if you need to say more. We approved this 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
You approved it in FY15, FY16, and we discussed it in FY17 and decided to take it out and revisit it. Not that we weren't supportive of it, but that we took it out because I was having trouble finding a suitable candidate. But you said at that time, come back if you find one, and I'm here now.
Make a motion to hire the middle school resource officer.
You know, what I believe is a suitable person.
Funding.
So.
From where? Be out of the school system that has the budget for the
Easy. Is contingency for this year, or are we just going to move it out of?
I would recommend taking it out on balances for expense.
Okay.
Okay. So do it.
So motion to move cost of middle school resource officer out of fund balance.
Will be
Is
the
it annual?
reoccurring,
Absolutely.
the reoccurring cost next year if we
Right.
do it again.
Absolutely.
Is there a second?
I do second.
Okay, probably moving second to fund a middle school resource officer out of fund balance, the amount of $14,760.
$670.
$670 approximately total for the remainder of this fiscal year. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you, gentlemen. I know Dr. Katz and I both appreciate it, and the students and the families.
In today's world,
Okay.
we all appreciate it, John.
Yeah, we do.
That's a troubled world we live in.
It's a very troubling place.
Question I have for you. In addition to the resource officer, any consideration of any other mechanical devices like metal detectors or scanners or anything else?
Well, I heard the presentation here with the when you come into the schools with the security section there. You know, I think that's probably something to seriously consider. You know, any building that you're trying to harden, you probably need to restrict access. And as much as we would like to believe that the doors are secure sometimes at the schools, sometimes they're usually secure, but people,
Lock them open.
they will block them open. And that's why it's so important to have resource officers going around checking doors, watching the cameras, and staff as well of the schools to keep that from happening. Before I came here, I was watching the news with what's going on in St. Mary's County. And earlier today, they were having a discussion about metal detectors. I don't know that we need that at this point in time, but certainly it could be discussed if that's what the school.
The metal detectors, you got to have employees. It's a big thing, right?
And they're only, we use them at the courthouse.
Right.
You still have to have someone there with a wand, because if the metal detector goes off, usually the metal detector shows exactly where the problem might be. So the person's got to be there at the wand and check the person a little further if there's an issue.
All them backpacks and stuff that kids got.
I think, school, the school rules are that you don't carry backpacks, that you keep them in your locker. Certainly you can bring them to school, but they have to go into a locker. And, I think it's important that we enforce the school rules as they're written. It's not something that a resource officer does. It's not the resource officer's job to enforce school rules. We're there for the security of the school, to keep the kids safe, the staff safe, and to maintain law and order, basically, if there's a criminal violation that occurs in their presence. As far as enforcing school rules, that goes to the administration of the schools to actually do all that. And I think they try to do a good job, but do some people violate those rules from time to time? Certainly.
Well, I can tell you, just so you know, a couple weeks ago I was out there doing radio station at high school, and I buzzed in. Nothing happened, but here comes a student that was walking out to their car, so they I walk in. But the good thing was that receptionist at the high school, she was up and out of her desk and walking towards that door that day to meet and greet me, say, who are you? So that was a good thing. I mean, she was attentive. She knew what she had to do. because she saw me on the video camera getting ready to come in, but she saw the exchange of what happened. So, and as soon as she recognized who it was, it all changed, but it went back. But she was attentive, so that's a good thing.
If I saw you coming to the door, I'd check you out, too.
Watch it there, Sheriff. You're not asking for any more requests tonight, right?
The other thing mentioned as far as the securing other accesses to the school, any of the school system, even though they may be locked, and we know some of our kids and adults may do otherwise, is there, since you the last time you brought up a program that some of the kids had done to detect whether an access panel is open.
Yeah, that's going on right now through IT. Right.
Yeah, it's great. Can we do that with the doors?
Yes, we have a fast reader that will identify when has to open the door and shut the door.
What happens if the door doesn't close? Do we detect that? So that during a period of time when all entrances are supposed to be closed, that the central office or somebody would know that, hey,
There's a door open.
there's a door open.
Do I want to rely on middle school students to code that? No. I think I would resort to a professional service for that type of alarm system.
Okay. Well, the guy right behind you may do that too.
He's had a long day. Leave him alone.
That would be a very nice thing for the school resource officers to have at both of those schools. You know, we're very fortunate to work with Dr. Jacob with the camera systems in the schools, and we have access to those cameras. And
I think William's talking about just like when these new cars that you get ready to start your car, one of the doors is open, it'll
let you know that. Right.
you had that in a school where if somebody had left a door open, it would show up.
Or maybe some kind of notification would come across your computer screen or on your phone or something to notify you that that door's been breached or whatever. So
Just a thought.
Right.
I do think, though, the security entrance that you're talking about in your recent presentation, I think that's a great idea, depending on how it's done and where it's located. I think that anytime that you can create
Slowdown period.
a slowdown period, yeah, we're going to be more successful in getting there and addressing the issue without a whole lot of people getting hurt.
This resource officer will start the end of the month. Is that what you said?
Start on March 30th, and he will be in the school. Now, there's a period of time that he has to go through. He has to do his 80 hours of field training,
Right.
and he has to also go to the range, and he has to take a couple of other courses in CPR and things like that. But it's our goal to have him in place on the morning of April 11th.
Okay, great.
That's cool.
All right.
Great. Thank you,
Sheriff.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate it. Okay. Oh, Wayne Morris. And Jim.
Why didn't you ask anybody? I hate you.
Monitoring road conditions.
How is the weather? I used to look nighttime.
Yeah, it's still sleeping.
What's it doing?
Still sleeping.
Just sleep.
Roads guys are on their way back in. So.
Well, I guess the first thing on there is the Kennedyville water, non-potable water pump. That was in the this year's capital budget.
Right.
And obviously it needs to be replaced because it's broken right now. They went out and got 3 quotes for that, and the lower quote was from Fremont Associates for the 28,462, which come under the budget number. So I'm asking for approval to.
So moved.
Second.
Second, probably moving the second to replace the non-potable water pump at Kennedyville wastewater treatment plant as quoted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried unanimously.
Second thing on there is on Langford Bay Road, this wasn't in the, I guess, the plan program to reseal this road or redo this road this year, but the extra funds that come down from Governor Hogan's budget for that highway user revenue, $105,000, Dan's looked into it, and he'd like to go ahead and get that resurfaced this year under the Bramwell contract through the state contract. And we're asking to move over $24,000 from his capital budget, or not capital budget, operating budget for his contractor snow removal. Obviously, we hope we're not going to need any, but it's got $60,000, and he wants to move over 24 so he can actually do the whole road as opposed to part of the road. That road was slurry sealed probably 10 or 12 years ago. And
What road are you talking about?
Langford Bay Road.
I remember.
Broadneck Road?
Slurry
Main
sealed.
road.
Yeah.
Going down Broadneck.
And it's cracking up really bad. It's really in bad shape. So he's like to go ahead and get the rest of it done and use the 105 plus the 20 that we want to do a budget adjustment for to do the whole road.
So moved.
Second.
Properly moving second to allow the resurfacing of Langford Bay Road for $129,600 estimate from Bramble Corporation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried unanimously. It's slurry seal doesn't last very long, does it?
No, it looks good going down, and it looks good for a couple of years, but it's
It just breaks up.
patch.
You'll get your money's worth out of it.
I never did think you got your money's worth out of it, but I mean, it's held up for this long, so.
Okay.
I think when we tar and chip, we're on a 9-year cycle, aren't we?
I think that's what we're on now.
It's lasted a little bit longer than
Yeah,
9-year tar and chip.
but that's
Right.
subject to change, obviously, with the weather. I mean, especially like this year when you have the warming where, everything happens and the water gets in the cracks and freezes and thaw, pops it out, so that's subject to change, so.
Okay.
The next thing on there is a memo from Jim here regarding the courthouse, and we're talking some capital money here too. That
Say we won't get that fixed for $24,000.
no, you're not. You're not. I can show you that. But we've looked into it. We sent the study off to Farmers Home. They've acknowledged that it's workable from their financial side if we want to go that route with financing it. And I guess we need some decisions from the commissioners on how we want to deal with this. One is, I'm assuming you're going to remain, all the functions in the courthouse are going to remain the same. We're not going to do anything, splitting anything up, right? Okay, that's the first decision. The second is, on the courthouse, you're going to look at the second option or the first option, standalone option versus building onto the existing one, which I think we talked that night that the standalone option was probably the preferred one. Cost less disruption and probably less construction in some ways.
Well, just update me on that cost, the
Standalone is about 13.4
million.
Million.
and the attachment to the 11 million.
I don't think you were here that night to give that explanation.
Yeah.
But the standalone option would sit out in the parking lot and attach to the building. I think it would fly better with the Chestertown Historic Commission. It also gives you the option to keep operations moving in the courthouse better than trying to put an attached addition to the building. That could be worked on and people could be moved into there. I think it would.
That's the one that was out in the parking lot, and we wouldn't lose but one or two parking places because people were going to park underneath of it on the first floor.
Yeah.
That, to me, was the best option. When Farmers Home, if you were to, this is hypothetical now, if we were to move forward with this, is there a timeline? I mean, they get refunded in October or something, do they?
Well, the funds are available now, according to what she said. We just need a decision so we can actually offer or let the architect know to need to move on with their process now to get the design and other factors into place so we can submit it in.
Is
for
another
final
2
approval.
months too long to wait?
Uh,
I mean, a reason for saying it, what I like, that's a big project, and we need to, and Billy needs to be brought up to speed because he wasn't here that night, and,
I mean, I've researched some of it, but my question is there any other, is there any offices there that can perhaps be utilized in any other facility that either we could purchase for a lower price and renovate, that necessarily would still give the courthouse the room they need to do what they have to do, but, save taxpayers, if we bought a separate building that's already available somewhere in the proximity and moved 2 departments in there for a lot less money, I mean, has that...
That was an option that really wasn't part of this study, although it was brought up and discussed. And I think at that time, the consensus from at least in the courthouse, and I think even from who was here that night, were in agreement that they would like to keep everything together in that location as opposed to building another place or moving some, district court versus, what other court might be there away from that area, to try to separate that.
With how we handle those from the detention center that have to
access it.
It's a standalone option that had the secure
Yes, it has to be
entrance,
open.
right? So that they could back right up and it would be secure and there would be a vestibule area.
But this Farmers Home, we're up USDA, the funding agent, and I know in the water projects they have a formula of either so much grant versus so much loan. This is all loan.
This is all loan. This is through their community facilities program, which is all loan, and the rate that she quoted is through March 31st, I think, is 3.5%, which is a very, very good rate. But obviously, and they looked at the fees.
Loans
Yes.
like the water and sewer.
Yes. Obviously for the,
What do they estimate the debt service a year on that?
well, we haven't got into that. We don't know what the numbers are from the,
If it did 14 million, I mean, maybe you can
It's a lot.
put a little calculator sometime to, Patricia, if you're $40 million and it's $14 million or $11 million at 3.85%. With your head? No, I'm just saying if you could send out that kind of information, then maybe tomorrow, and then we could address this.
Well, I suggested we table this until our next meeting and make a decision.
Yeah, I mean, because I'd like to know that because, as you know, we already got hit with like 8 or 9 million tonight from the school.
do that.
All these things together, I mean,
After a while, you're going to be talking about real money.
I think we're there. I think we're there.
We will table this until we consider it at our next meeting, and Pat will have all the.
If you just,
Well,
yeah, if you could
that would
start
help,
compiling these few things we got, and even that old estimate we had on the facility outside of the school, if we had to do it outside the school system for sheriff's department, emergency services, because we had that quote a few years ago. Just add $1 million, because I'm sure it's much more now. But just so we can have an idea and a concept of what this is going to cost over the next 2 years, because that's 2 years.
All right.
How firm was the quote for the public safety buildings? I'm not sure that was a very firm quote, was it?
I think it was just an estimate.
I think
It was.
yeah.
I'm not too sure. Sheriff was about or her?
No, I think Wayne Darrell. I remember Wayne Darrell worked hard on, but it was like $1,300 or $1,500 a square foot, which absolutely blew my mind for that kind of facility coming from the ground up. So I mean,
And I will say that's going to be a tough site if you try to put it back out there.
I agree. That's why we're having other discussions. But the concept of the number, so we could figure out at that kind of a financial situation, what's it going to mean to the county here in just a short period of time? Because it looks like we're getting hit with a lot of big ones.
And we had a feasibility study in this year's budget for public safety, but we tabled that until some of the other pieces fell
Right. Together.
together, right?
Thank you, sir.
And we will not try to convert the community center. Thank you, gentlemen.
I didn't even think of that. I mean, you planted seed.
To be the detention center or OES? What are we talking?
No detention center in Wharton.
Byron Ward.
That's right.
been a long meeting.
Long day.
Yeah, we started at 5:30 this morning in D.C., so we're tired.
Scott Boone, our Director of Information Technology.
Who was there as well.
Zin from DC.
Here he is, the star.
Well, we got 2 stars. They both were superstars.
Oh, that's right. Thank you, sir. Welcome back.
There. Sure. Okay, so we've had a busy 2 weeks. Last Tuesday, we were invited to the White House complex, to the old Executive Office building, to speak with Trump administration officials about the fiber project here in Kent County. They selected us, and they selected an education group out of Utah to talk about the differences. And as you're aware, there's a $1 trillion possible infrastructure proposal, and of that, many billions of dollars could be slated for rural broadband. And so they were looking for stories, about how people did it, and we have that to and through using the anchor institutions like schools, libraries, public safety. And it seems to be gaining some traction over there. And so April and I attended that meeting last Tuesday, and then we were lucky enough just today, this morning, Laura and I were over speaking to the Senate Broadband Caucus up on Capitol Hill, also about the fiber project and how it affects education, and all the great, wonderful things Laura is going to be doing with it. So it was great to have Kent County recognized by both the executive and the legislative branch of the federal government.
Yeah, it's pretty nice this morning to sit there and witness that, because they actually paid attention to you. It's not like going to our local, in Annapolis, and they're playing viphones, they're eating crackers. There, everybody paid attention, and they actually asked you questions afterwards. So it was really nice that it's really taking traction, and it was good for me. It was good to see that, as bad as we were in that process with internet and in the county and the structure we had before this, there are people so much worse than we are.
Oh, yeah.
But now they're all looking at us as.
They haven't even started, and,
Right.
and they're looking for those strategies. And we latched onto the idea of using anchor sites years ago, and now there's whole organizations being formed around this is the right way of doing it. And like we said many years ago, it's a way to avoid that bridge to nowhere, because until those providers get out there there's a use, right? I mean, it's not just sitting there dormant. We can actually use it for things. One of the things we touched on as far as like closing the homework gap is the idea of these open access points that we're going to have out in the community now. Everything from beaches to parks. They asked if anybody was doing buses, which we talked about. But in the end, instead of having to move buses around and have the drivers go here and there, there are stationary, there's static points out in the community now, or will be shortly, in every municipality, in some case villages. Where
Everybody's going to have one somewhere close to where they live. Just about it's spread all through the county. And
correct.
just following up on what Billy said, I enjoyed coming over there. We were proud to see the pair of you there, and you both done an excellent job. You held your own with the people in that field, and we were real proud of you.
Thank you.
And I don't know whether the people in Kent County realize what this project's going to bring to Kent County, but people away from here certainly do.
Well, and we spent the rest of the day, I spent the rest of the day with, I was at the FCC chairman's office, speaking with legal counsel there regarding our strategy, and then we had another appointment with another one of the FCC commissioner's staff as well to kind of discuss where we want to go. One of the things I'm very interested in is EVS spectrum, so we spoke with the FCC all day today about that, and that's a licensed spectrum where there are some counties that are looking at ways of using county infrastructure to offer free internet access to all public school students. And the way it's done is it's tied to school systems that fit, like ours, where you have that one-to-one initiative. So only that device can connect back. So it's not like you're giving it to an entire household, like when you hand out a MiFi or things like that. But there's a moratorium right now, from what I understand, and so we're looking to get a waiver from the FCC to see if we can get one of those. I've already identified a place in Michigan that's done it. It's difficult, but that's why we're going right to the FCC to see what we can do about it.
Yeah, they seemed very interested in that.
We can get a waiver. That would be it'll be really a boon to our students.
It's the opposite.
It would be a game changer for them, absolutely.
Right. And we have the opposite problem. There are people out there that have that piece of paper that have access to that, okay, but don't have the infrastructure. I mean, I know one county is trying to build 85 miles of fiber in a much more difficult area and trying to build towers on top of it. We already had the towers. Now the fiber's almost done. We're weeks away. We just need that piece of paper.
Right.
And we have the right staff.
We could trade them a bushel of crabs if they wanted.
Yeah.
We're working on it. I'm sorry, it's been a long day.
It was a good day, and again, we appreciate all you done. The pair of you worked well together up there. You fed off one another, and you come across real well.
And just so you know, Dr. Couch knew you did a good job because I made sure she knew. Okay. I sent it, so I did one of these. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Myra Butler, our Director of Parks and Recreation. I'll stop picking on you eventually.
Forgive me, I might be here for a few minutes. I might need to take a drink. All right, so I have two requests tonight. The first of which is related to repairs needed at Bayside Landing Park and Pool. And I'll preface the request with the funding source that's been identified to actually fund the request. So you all know that Bayside is an enterprise account. It's a self-sustaining operation. And with that, there is a year-end projection of $6,467 in revenue, along with another $2,217 in seasonal salary savings that's expected. The repairs at Bayside Pool, and there is a quote included in your packet. So at Bayside Pool, there are three things specifically that we need to have done. The first of which is the dual main drain. It actually is out of compliance, according to Code of Maryland regulations. When we got an emergency repair for our pump last summer, it required an inspection with inspectors coming from the Baltimore office to actually inspect to make sure that pump was installed correctly and the pool operated correctly. With that is when they recognized that the distance between those two main drains were less than the required 36 inches apart. Now, we've been operating that pool since 2003, but because the local health department inspectors aren't into the construction side of it, it's more of the, health, safety, that part of it. That's not something that was ever, noticed before last fall. The second item is the safety hazard that's right outside the pool gates. There's concrete that's kind of sunken down, and there's a drain cover outside the pool gate that it's a safety hazard, a trip hazard, and we would not pass the inspection to open that pool with that existing safety hazard there. The third thing, the floor drain in the filter room, it backs up. There's standing water that occurs. It eventually drains, but not in the time frame that it should, and that as well, that's a health code violation. So those total repairs cost $2,000, and the program open space fund, no, I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself. That's part of another request. So the money that is supposed to actually transfer to the general fund, the revenue from Bayside, along with the salary savings, would cover the costs. These particular costs are $2,000. So tonight's request is to ask for a reallocation of $2,000 of that funding to cover the cost of these repairs at Bayside.
Second. Arthur moved, second to reallocate $2,000 to complete the Bayside pool repairs. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, my second request is related to Millington Pool bathhouse and its flooring there. Currently, the flooring at Millington Pool is it's not slip-proof, and that, of course, is a safety concern. We have a quote to pretty much put flooring in that's comparable to the bathhouse flooring at Community Center Pool. That quote is $9,184. The special program open space fund, there's a memo in your packet. There's $30,175 in a fund that specifically designated for program open space type projects. developers, when they develop subdivisions, in lieu of providing open space in those subdivisions, they pay a $250 fee per dwelling. And we've accumulated over the years $30,175 that actually doesn't have any identified use. And although it's specific to program open space, it's not regulated by the state program open space program. Counties.
It's not restricted.
No, it's not restricted.
Yeah, we can use it.
We can use it, basically. So my request is to, out of that $30,175, to fund the flooring request of $9,184 from that fund.
Second.
Properly moved and second to fund the slip-proof flooring safety hazard at Millington Pool as requested. All those in favor say aye. Motion is carried unanimously.
Okay, so in addition to the pool repairs that are specific to operations at Bayside, at Millington Pool as well as the community center pool, there are also some additional time-sensitive repairs that we're in need of. So with this particular request,
Why did all these become time sensitive?
well, it actually took me some time to pull all this together. We've got, at the end of the season last year, all of these things were noted as things that would need to be addressed. And as far as me actually getting the quotes, and originally tonight I was also going to be presenting another request for funding, but that ended up being pulled out. So that was all a part of the process of me gathering information with costs and pricing and whatnot. So it did take a little bit for me to pull this all together. So with the repairs at Millington Pool, and this is outside of the slip-proof flooring, the first recommendation is to convert the existing sanitation system, which we use chlorine tablets, we use soda ash, we use some other chemicals that are less effective. What I'm requesting and what's actually being recommended is that we convert that sanitation system to liquid chlorine and acid, which would certainly allow for more efficient operations. It would reduce the issues that we have on a continual basis throughout each season with cloudiness, calcium buildup, high alkalinity, algae. It'll reduce the number of closures that we have, and those water clarity and balancing issues basically would pretty much be non-existent.
As a self-sustaining system instead of relying on your help.
Yes, we would have less service calls because of this new system.
And this is at Millington, right?
And this is at Millington, right. Now, I do want to point out, though, if we do convert to this system, there will be increased costs for supplies on an annual basis because of the liquid chlorine and the acid, and that would be about an additional $9,000 to $10,000 each year. Now, the costs, they're high, but the benefits certainly outweigh the costs. The benefits mean
Shut down last year.
for Millington, there were at least 3 times that we...
Summer, you shut down because of cloudy water
or algae growth or high alkalinity or calcium buildup.
Now, does that come just as much from supervision of who's supposed to be applying the chemicals to the pool, the system that's sit there now? Because you said you're using tablets and stuff, so somebody has to be putting the tablets in and doing
Right.
pool checks and things like that. So is it staffing that's not doing their correct duties?
No. And one of the other handouts that I believe you have now, the memo, which, and forgive me, that was something that was accidentally missed from being uploaded. So one of the things, let me make sure I have that myself. One of the things that happens with chlorine tablets, there's a chlorine lockout, and because of the cyanuric acid, that's a high level that's found in the tablets. And with the liquid chlorine and the acid, that would eliminate that problem as well. And one of the other things, which isn't noted on here, but with our pool over the course of the all-season during the winter. And because we also have a lot of trees, there's a lot of debris, of course, that goes into the pool during the off-season. There's staining of the bottom of the pool that essentially takes pretty much almost the whole season for them to disappear, if not. And actually, that's in my request for capital for next year, actually.
How much is that, do you think?
Cover? About $7,500.
So, part of what we're talking about here, cover, would eliminate quite a bit of what you just said in that.
I wouldn't say quite a bit.
Well,
Some.
staining issues, whatever it may be. I mean, so would we be better off? I mean, if you're looking at a recurring cost of $9,000 after this, and that's not covered by any open space money or anything like that. So you're looking at a significant cost for something that's only open, how many weeks?
4 months.
Yeah, 4 months. I mean, it would certainly lends itself to a more efficient operational system. It would also preserve the life of the plaster. We shouldn't have to replaster a pool, every 8-9 years. It should be more like 10 to 15 years. This system would actually, help preserve the life of the plaster as well.
Let me stop you a minute. How much does it cost to replaster a pool?
At that site, the last time it was about $15,000.
Because you're looking at spending $100,000 over that same period of time for a $15,000 cost replacement of plastering. I'm just throwing this out there. I'm struggling with spending the extra for this type of system for something that's open 3 to 4 months a year, that gets shut down 3 days a year of that whole cycle. I'm going to tell you right now, I have a problem with spending $100,000 for a $15,000 fix over a 10-year period.
I have to say, if it's going to increase the cost of the pool by $10,000 a year, I'd rather see you put cover in here or something that maybe we could keep that debris out of there, and that's a one-time cost.
And it'll fix a little
We'll
bit.
see how much of a fix it does, and then if it still needs some additional attention, we'll revisit it.
When you consider conversion is $9,000 according to this, then you can buy a pool cover out of that money too.
Correct?
True.
So it wouldn't have to be budget next year. You could go ahead and get that knocked out if we approve it tonight.
You say you would pay for a cover. Well, we wouldn't put it on until
Right,
next
but
fiscal
you
year
just need
anyway.
to have it done. Now, would the pool cover possibly be covered out of the open space money?
No, not the cover.
Okay, but was this $9,000?
$9,000 was going to be covered, was it? Or
So there's a funding summary. That was going to be out of the special program open space.
Okay, but you're saying even the pool cover wouldn't be able to be covered,
Not under program open space, no.
but I think it's still a wise investment to do that.
But it actually is at your discretion what you fund. Is it recommended? What was the fee in lieu of designed for recreation and open spaces? Yes. Now, does this support it? Yes. It supports our recreational facility.
So it
Pretty
can
much
cover.
it's covered.
Right. You have the discretion to use the funds for that.
I'd rather approve, once you get a concrete number on that pool cover, if you know it's $7,500, I'd rather change this little bullet point you got here for Millington and allocate a new pool cover for Millington, which is one-time cost, which isn't $100,000 over 10 years. And that doesn't seem like
In
a,
lieu of the converting the.
If you take the $9,000 liquid chlorine and put a cover in its place, I'll approve it.
that's what I'm talking about.
That's what we were talking about.
Right.
Okay.
So moved.
specifically, that money can be reassigned. The request was to use $9,000 of that program open space. So instead of the $30,000, you're recommending a $7,500 pool cover, which would be procured using
I would say
county procurement.
not to exceed because we don't know what the estimate is.
And if you need a little bit more when the time comes, we'll just readdress it.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And then the other items related to Millington Pool, rehabbing the pump, which is recommended every 2 to 3 years, just a preventive maintenance measure to extend the life of the pump. sand replacement every 5 to 10 years for the sand filter, and then the ladder slip hazard there. And then for
Wear off or?
yes, because right now there's just an adhesive, where this is going to be more of a PVC plastic trick, right?
And is that money coming out of the?
Yes. And then for the community center pool repairs, those repairs totaling $45,750. We've got a structural issue with the platform of the tube slide in the deep end, so we need to get some repairs done with that. There's actually also a 5-foot area of plaster that's actually delaminating, separated from the concrete bottom of the pool. So that's a pretty expensive cost of about $30,000. And with that, that one, it's a matter of when that's actually going to break, and if it's not repaired, outside of when the pool's open, we're at minimum shut down for a week and a half, possibly 2 weeks.
You just need to get.
What's the warranty?
Well, it's 9 years old now.
For-
Yeah, 9 years this year.
This is your estimate. We'll get a price on that, right? Or have you gotten a price on it?
Yeah, that's one of my requests a little bit later. Yes, this is a firm price, actually. And then the expansion joint tile and caulk replacement. And then we actually have an issue also with sand towards the end of the season that was leaking into the bottom of the pool, which means there's a broken sand lateral. So to rehab that filter, replace the sand, because the pool has to be drained, all the sand has to come out of that lateral, and then replace it all, of course, and until we refill the pool. And the component inspection, that's about $10,000. That is a $10,000 cost.
You got to do that anyway to put the plaster in the pool, right? To replaster that area? You got to drain the pool.
Yes.
So you can do it all at the same time?
Yes.
And that money's coming from?
Now that money actually is coming from, now $9,991 of it would be coming from that special program open space fund. And then the remaining $34,859 for this particular fiscal year I've identified, we've actually got about almost $44,000 in seasonal salary savings for various reasons, some related to lifeguards and shutdowns and not working because of rain or whatnot. But I can absorb that from seasonal salaries.
So moved.
Second.
Barton moving second to make the needed repairs to the community center pool. As stated, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And what you guys just approved was the funding part. Now Myra's going to talk about the vendor for the community center pool.
Right.
Community center pool.
Probably going to lease it from us this year and make.
Actually, it's for all the pools.
For all the pools.
Oh, right. So I think I just combined two pieces of
So this is a new
requests.
that you're thinking about starting.
I'm sorry.
This is something new that you're thinking about starting at all pools.
No.
Vendors?
No.
For the repairs. What you just approved
Got it.
was the
Got it.
dollar.
I thought you were talking your food vendors again.
No.
No, not
Okay.
food.
So with the, all right, so now, the flooring for the bathhouse aside, the rest of those repairs for all three pools, Bayside, Millington, and the community center, they total $58,750. And
That's the 9,000 for the chlorine.
yes, less than $9,000 for the chlorine, but potentially up a little bit higher because of the pool cover. That would be approved.
But that would be a different vendor, I'm sure, right?
Yes. That is true. So yes, less that amount for the pool cover. My request, and there are, let's see, let me just make sure I haven't missed anything. All right, so my request is to actually award the project for the repairs of all three pools to CW Services. CW Services is a vendor that we have used for all of our pool repair and maintenance since we actually opened the community center pool. This particular vendor was actually subcontracted by Paddock Pools, who built the community center pool, to do quite a bit of the work related to the construction of the pool. And with CW Services, this vendor has, for all of our opening and closing needs, we've always tried to get quotes from, at least 2 other vendors other than him, which we have not been successful because we're either told we don't service commercial pools, or you're outside of our, service area, or we just didn't get a clue. So that's one of the reasons I'm asking him to be awarded the award. Additionally, his level of expertise in COMAR regulations with swimming pool operations is pretty superior, to be quite honest. He's never steered us wrong. Any of our recommendations for pool repairs, he's done he did the emergency pool pump repair at Bayside. He also did it for the community center pool last summer as well. The last plastering job we had at Millington Pool as well as Bayside Pool was performed by CW Services. He knows our pools inside and out.
Yes, for a sole source.
Correct.
That's all we have to say.
Which I'm opposed to.
I was getting ready to tell you that, Myra.
Now,
I realize CW Services may get the award, but it has to be competed for at a level this amount. Even if you put out there and nobody else bids but this guy.
Now, part of the request is because we're at a point where if this work isn't scheduled, to happen in the next, 2 weeks or so, then it's going to jeopardize our ability to be able to open pools on time.
I understand that.
Well, I'm going to just disagree with the approach and the time it took you to bring this to the table, because then we could have had the ability to go out and bid it. Again, hopefully they would have got it. But I don't want to hold the project up because May is coming and the pools need to be open. So I will support it, even though it is sole sourcing in this situation.
Don't let it happen again.
That's my point, because I think the time-sensitive spot really, Myra, come down as hard as you worked at it, come down in the department versus these guys, because we could have put it out to bid instead of thinking in 2 weeks we have to sign it as commissioners. So, okay, so I will motion to support it.
Probably move in second to award this service contract to CW Services of Dunkirk, Maryland. What's the total amount for them?
$58,750.
Stated. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Opposed? So motion's carried 2-1.
Thank you.
And to clarify, that's for the award of the contract not to exceed $48,850. But the contract, would you like to talk about the contract signing upon legal?
Yes. So pending legal review of the contract for all of this work, followed, and that's favorable, followed by the signing of the contract by Shelley for that approval to be contingent on those 2 things.
Doesn't have to be. I'll sign it.
No. You said it doesn't have to be you signing it? Is that what you...
No, he said he will still sign it.
He said he'll sign it.
It doesn't have to be.
So the motion can be pending legal approval in not to exceed $48,850, that the board vote that William can sign on behalf of the commissioners.
Okay.
Probably move in second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion's carried. That motion carried.
Thank you. All right. And lastly, finally, I have 2 board members whose terms expired December 31st. They are happy to be reappointed again, so I'm requesting their reappointment.
So moved.
Second.
All right, move in second that the recommended individuals be reappointed to the board of
Parks and Recreation Advisory Board.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Already signed.
Thank you very much. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Director of Human Resources. When did that change from personnel? Okay.
It makes it sound more important.
Yes, sir.
Did you pick it?
When I started the department
Oh,
in
there you
2000 and
10 years ago? Ish?
yeah. So personnel was an old term. All right. Well, thank you. I think I'll make some quick work of this. I hopefully. I have 3 amendments to the Policies and Procedures Manual, or the Employee Policy Manual. The first one has to do with adding the language of the state of Maryland's new sick and safe leave policy. While we have always conformed with a policy that's more generous than what the state has, we first of all needed to incorporate the new employees and the 12-hour employees that are going to accrue an hour of sick leave and everything. And also the new sick and safe leave policy expands the definition of a family member as well as reasons for use of sick and safe leave. So we've incorporated that terminology. I think you saw it. It's in red. So I'm requesting approval of that language change and the addition of the sick and safe leave policy to the employee manual.
So moved.
Second.
Probably moving second to approve the amended sick leave policy, administrative leave policy, and leave without pay policies as presented. All those in favor say aye. Motion is carried.
Okay, the next 2 policy changes requesting, we had a situation, or it came to our attention, with the spring forward and daylight savings time, that the policy that was approved in November actually does not include payment of that lost hour. It includes either leave without pay, that the employees would use their own personal leave. And so while I've already authorized payment of that hour, I want to change it in the manual to reflect
Paying it.
that, that's doable. It's 10 hours, so I think,
So it's only 10 employees?
well, it's roughly 10 employees, 4 correctional officers, 2 dispatchers, 2 emergency services employees, and 2 sheriffs at mid or 2 a.m. when the time changes. They lose the hour, and I thought it was appropriate. It was such a small gesture for the hard work and dedication they give to the citizens of the county and also as us as an employer. Okay, so, all right, so as a result,
All those in favor say aye. Motion is carried unanimously.
okay, so now that you took that out of leave without pay, I need it added to the administrative leave section to say that it's an authorized administrative leave use.
So moved. Yes. Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And the actual language is in here. The page replacements and everything are included in your packet. And lastly, I believe I'm asking to hire, I didn't bring the sheet with me, but it is either a dispatcher or EMS or a paramedic.
Paramedic.
Part-time paramedic. There you go.
Your department again?
Personnel. Okay, I know enough of it that I could get through it, but it was one of those 2. So it's an as-needed position. They're simply, required to work 12 hours a month in a fill-in position when someone calls out sick or is on vacation. So, yes, the hours are budgeted under.
Probably moving second to hire the recommended part-time paramedic for emergency services. All those in favor say aye. Motion.
Aye.
Motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. And we have a need for those occasionally. We try to carry 3 or 4 of them to fill in, and we were fortunate enough to have one apply during a full-time posting. So,
Okay.
thank you. 2.5 hours.
You're devoted.
Rosemary Granella, Director of
Ramsey.
Grinnell, I'm sorry. Director of Local Management Board.
Good.
She's tired too.
Don't worry, I'll screw that up next time. I'm good.
I am here to request that we sign the Emergency Solutions Grant. It's a grant from the Department of Housing and Community Development. And we have the grant award, and we just need to sign the contract.
Motion to sign the contract.
Second.
Probably moving second to execute the appropriate contract. Go ahead.
Let me say it
Discussion?
more official. Motion to approve DHCD's Emergency Solutions Grant.
Second.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's right. Properly moved in second to approve DHCD's Emergency Solutions Grant for federal fiscal year 2017 and state fiscal year 2018. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion is carried unanimously.
Wonderful. Thank you.
That's it? Okay.
Thank you, Rusty.
Mine's quick.
Good evening.
Mine's very short and sweet tonight. I have one motion in front of you, and that is to approve a recommended appointee by the Fire Chiefs Association to the Eastern Shore Board.
Motion to approve.
Or, excuse me, Emergency Services Board. It has been a long night.
Second.
Probably moving second to appoint the recommended individual to the County Emergency Services Board. All those in favor say aye. Motion is carried unanimously. That's it? You have anything?
Not a thing.
No. Just, no, we're
I
good.
have no comment. Any questions? No?
No way, man. That's bad when it's past your bedtime.
I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.
Ed Jack says, no, no, no.
Anything but that.